your superhero movies and audience. If I had my way, I would shove a fucking mobile phone right up every single one of your big fucking area. Sideways, mind you, and keep calling it all day long until you all get rectal cancer. Thank you, Lars. Well, that's out of the way. It's time to cast our eyes forward into the far-flung future of March 2026, when Project Hail Mary is going to get released. If there's any movie that can stir something vaguely resembling excitement in the cold ashes of my black heart, it's probably this. Yeah, maybe that's because I'm a big fan of the book, which was written by the same author as The Martian, and got adapted into probably the last good film ever seen from Ridley Scott. Or maybe it's because I'm an optimist at heart and I desperately want to see something succeed by its own remake of the Red Dead franchise sequel, or yet another aimless cape shoot disaster. Or maybe it's because they just released a new trailer for it, and I'm not gonna lie, it looks pretty fucking good. No way. Yes way. So rather than make another video bemoaning the state of modern cinema, I thought it might be a refreshing change to look at something I'm actually optimistic about and explain why I wanted to do well. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with the source material, allow me to furnish you with some background. The story is set in the near future where scientists discover that our sun seems to be getting mysteriously dimmer, almost like it's running out of energy, which is a bit concerning really because it's not supposed to happen for a few billion years yet. World's best mind scientific Ünkldåd have actually discovered that it's been infested by a microscopic organism known as astrophage that migrates from star to star and literally feeds on solar energy. And because they can store enormous amounts of it inside their own bodies, they can move almost at the speed of light, which allows them to infest all the stars in our neighborhoods. Naturally, this is bad news for planet Earth because eventually the astrophage will consume all of the sun's fuel and the human race will die out. Something has to be done fast. That's when one particular star gets discovered that doesn't seem to have been affected like its neighbors. Clearly, there's something about it that the astrophage don't like, so we need to find out what it is. Thus, the plan is formed to use the astrophage as a fuel source to propel a ship at close to light speed to this nearby star, find out what the real source of the compound away from it, and bring it back to Earth before the sun goes out and everyone dies. No pressure then, but because it's kind of a long shot, slim chances of success, I assume gets dubbed Project Hail Mary. The team is assembled to head into the mission including Dr. Alan Pace, the molecular biologist who first identified the astrophage virus. Although he's not exactly trained to be on a mission, and with a fate according to our planets at stake, you probably have to say yes. But when he wakes up from cryo-sleep investigation, he discovers that the rest of the crew are dead and he's got no memory of who he is and why he's there. Well, it's not a great start, is it? Shit gets even more real when the Hail Mary encrypts an alien spacecraft that turns out to be on the same mission as his. Turns out the Earth isn't the only planet looking for a solution to the astrophage problem. All you need an antenna cable and pretty simple one to communicate with the ships on them from now on and pull together to help save both of their planets. It's an oddball premise that when it's backed by the insane physics behind near light speed travel, it introduces a bunch of fascinating sci-fi concepts in a way that even I might not understand, and gives us an alien species that feels genuinely alien for once, instead of just a slightly ugly humanoid in a rubber suit. And yeah, I'm looking at you, Predator fans. But at its core, Project Hail Mary is really a story about friendship and loyalty in the most unusual circumstances. Two wildly different individuals learning to work together to overcome the differences because the fate of both their worlds depends on not looking to mutilate the other else. And ultimately, what they're willing to risk to help each other out when everything starts to go wrong and it seems like there's no one left. I say all of this because I want you to understand what makes the book so compelling, so you can also understand what I want to see translated into the movie. And in terms of the visuals and the production design, this is a real quotable book perfectly. Just like The Martian, the technology and design in the Hail Mary looks grounded and real, like it was cobbled together with a rush from existing spacecraft parts, which if the ship looks exactly like the picture, and so does Rocket
That
as
in
a
post.
pilot. It's kind of another story about a species evolved in an extremely harsh environment, so it basically resembles a giant fridge under a rock. He doesn't have a face like we'd understand it, but a head for flair. So the big challenge you're going to have with this one is making him emote enough that the audience can empathise with him. Ryan Gosling was a solid choice for Bach. He's already proven he can balance humour with drama and believe he can play everyman type characters with a bit of likability, so that's not an issue. My only slight concern though is the choice of director, or directors in this case. Bill Ward and Chris Miller obviously have been naturally in the reality of what's going on with a bit of levity thrown in at just the right time to bring the tension. And I'm going to be a happy man if, on the other hand, they try to turn it into the life of movie in space. Well, then I'm going to have to stop being so polite. Ultimately, though, what I've seen so far makes me cautiously optimistic for Project Hail Mary. I think and hope it's going to be good, and I really want to see it written and thought-provoking sci-fi movies make a comeback, because Jesus Christ, Hollywood needs to start taking on more original projects like this instead of churning out endless sequels to tired old franchises and beating the dead horse of the superhero genre. Something has got to give. This time I'll just turn it to Hollywood's own personal Hail Mary too. Look once, look what looks out the window. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Bye. Here at Production Hell, I've covered all manner of cinematic scrubs, from disorganized shoots to clashing personalities, natural disasters, punishing bad conditions, ego-driven actors, conflicting visions, and lack of creative direction. But if one man whose movies stand head and shoulders above all the rest, a man whose name has become infamous amongst the most perfectionist and eccentric of Hollywood directors, the man in question is Stanley Kubrick, and really in this case it is the magnum opus of the Vietnam War, Full Metal Jacket. Now you don't need me to tell you that Kubrick movies have a long history of difficult productions, but I think Full Metal Jacket might just take the cake for his weird decision to bring Vietnam to southeast England. Its grueling year-long shoot and all the little dramas and iconic moments that it spawned. So grab your rifle, Marine, and let's guess. By the early 1980s, with The Shining finally finished, Stanley Kubrick was on the hunt for ideas for his next film. For a while, he considered adapting a dream story, an obscure novella by Arthur Schnitzler that he'd been obsessed with for decades but never managed to crack, or Super Toy's Last All Summer Long, another obscure little short story about an adopted villager and his mother's love written and taken away since the early 70s. As it turned out, though, the time wasn't right for Dream Story, which would have to wait another 20 years to eventually become a nice wide shots. And as for Super Toys, that film would need a couple of decades as well, and a new director before it finally saw the light of day. Instead, he returned to one of the key themes of his career: war. In this case, the Vietnam War, which was going through a bit of a renaissance in the public consciousness at the time. The Vietnam War was gradually being reframed as a noble cause, movies succeeded, and even the action movies of the time were literally trying to rewrite the war with a happier ending.
So our accordion whistle is getting the cake. So
Kubrick decided he wanted
we have an accordion?
Vietnam not as some existential
Another
journey
accordion.
into the human psyche like Apocalypse Now,
Smaller.
or some cheesy action flick starring Chuck Norris, but a more realistic take on what it was actually like for the young men being fed into the war machine. For this, he eventually chose the novel The Short Timers, about the experiences of real-life Marine Gustav Hasford, from basic training all the way up to his deployment in Vietnam. He had a story, and now all he needed to do was adapt it into a screenplay. But in typical Stanley Kubrick fashion, nothing was ever easy, and in this case, he chose to contact his friend Michael Herr, who had served in Vietnam himself and written his own book about his experiences. Herr was reluctant to revisit the memories of Vietnam.
Oh, that's interesting.
But Kubrick was adamant that he meant to be the one, and it took him 3 years to finally
Calvin?
persuade the guy to sign up. Damn, that's determination right there. With Herr finally working on the main draft of the screenplay, Kubrick also enlisted Hasford himself to help out, without telling either of us that the other was working on it. This was actually a pretty common tactic of his, because he believed that people produced their best work in isolation rather than collaboration, and he could then pick and choose the best elements of both screenplays to make some kind of master script. It didn't work out too well for him in this case, because Hasford eventually got pissed off that he didn't get proper writing credit, and even threatened to sue the production unless he got his way. On that subject, actually, Kubrick was keen to meet with Hasford in person so he could get a sense of the guy, and invited him round to his house for dinner one night. Herr advised him against it, knowing that Kubrick was shy, thoughtful, and soft-spoken, and Hasford was, to put it bluntly, a scary man, a big haunted Marine. The meeting went about as well as you might expect, and Kubrick never met with him again.
Not a great plan.
Anyway, by 1985, the script was still ready, and it was in locations. Now you might think that Vietnam would be well,
Wow.
or at the very least,
What a
another
base.
Southeast Asian country that double for it. Kubrick got the actors to do lines, turned the movie around, combined with a general blockbuster. Although that fell through with the Bach option, people thought they'd have to part with those. As luck would have it though, its people tried to match the Bach to find additional chemical storage in the gas station in London that was due to be delivered, but it also happened to be surrounded by so instead went to work, carefully
Wow.
demolishing parts of the plant to make it look like a city under
What a
siege. An entire plastic
sound.
jungle was manufactured in America to give the place a more tropical feel. Only Kubrick didn't like the look of it and instead had live trees flown in from Spain. British Army bases were Britain's training camp, and a lot of the background imagery you see in the movie are actual British soldiers. Casting also proved to be a challenge. Kubrick was annoyed at war films and their tendency to cast actors in their 20s and 30s as frontline soldiers when the average fighting man was aged 10. And so
Wow.
to find suitable actors to
Wow.
play the Marine recruits. Unfortunately, most of the teenage actors auditioned were far too
Wow.
muscle men who were gunning down
That is
entire
kind of
on-street armies at the time.
an
There was
incredible
apparently
instrument.
serious talk of casting Arnold Schwarzenegger in the role for a while.
Ah,
Yeah.
Wow.
Talk about on-the-nose
Wow.
casting. I mean, much as I love the idea of Stanley Kubrick trying to coax the performance out of Arnold for hundreds of takes, I think it might have undermined the film's credibility a little bit.
Well, there's a powerful little machine.
Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. The role originally went to Tim Colcherry, but it soon became obvious that the guy wasn't taking it seriously enough, and his performance came across as comical rather than intimidating. What cometh the hour, cometh the man, and in this case, the man happened to be legendary Arnie Ernie, a minor technical advisor in the movie who just so happened to be a former US Marine drill instructor. Oh, I was lucky. Ernie asked to give a tryout for the role and promptly launched into a star. Used to mix a bunch of helpless extras. Most of what he said was so explicit that it could never have been used in the actual movie, but the point was made all the same. Kubrick was so impressed that he cast him immediately, and at that moment, one of the most iconic characters in cinema history was born. When the casting settled, principal photography began in August 1985, but the Vietnam battle scenes due to be shot first, and this is where the problems really began. First and foremost was Kubrick himself, whose pursuit of the perfect take was already infamous in Hollywood. The problem was that he was never great at articulating what he actually wanted from his actors, and so his solution was to just keep shooting until he eventually got what he wanted through sheer repetition. This approach resulted in more than a few meltdowns over the years, especially during The Shining, where he forced his crew actors to do the same scene 148 times. Bach basically refused to move on until he was 100% satisfied, and considering they were shooting on location with dozens, if not hundreds of extras, tempers soon started to fray. He was also pretty much incapable of making a decision and sticking to it, and so the script ended up being reworked and refined constantly throughout the shoot. Even the ending wasn't decided until the 11th hour. The original treatment would have seen John get killed and finish up with his funeral, and it was only Odeon who persuaded him to change it. All these various delays were compounded by the British film crew and their unique ways of working, which mandated tea breaks every couple of hours, even if they were right in the middle of an important shot, which naturally didn't sit well with a hard-driving director like Kubrick. This must just be a complimentary tea break. If you broke the tea at 4, you'd have to break the tea at 6.
Kubrick had a problem with the tea break, that's for sure.
For a meal at 7:30. The location for the battle scenes was also turning out to be less than optimum. It turns out that a disused chemical plant isn't the best environment to shoot a war movie in. The ground was saturated with decades worth of chemicals and toxins that had never been cleaned up, and in the summer heat had turned into a kind of grainy windblown dust that got to everyone. Clothes, hair, camera equipment, lungs. Pretty soon the cast and crew were coming down with all kinds of mysterious illnesses that lingered for weeks war zone for months on end, and some of them were starting to lean dangerously by the end. The aircraft sniper that gets gunned down in the climactic showdown was played by a teenage girl from London that had never acted before. After shooting her death scene, Kubrick wanted to do another take because, of course, he felt her dead, and so he showed her a rough cut of the scene to review her performance. Unfortunately, she wasn't prepared for it, and she was so traumatized that she ran out of the room sobbing and refused to do any more. Needless to say, Kubrick's reshoot never happened. All was not well with the rest of the cast either. Nadine and D'Onofrio might have started out as good friends, but the relationship gradually soured as the shoot wore on, and their conflicting acting styles rubbed each other the wrong way. The two men actually stopped talking to each other and eventually almost came to blows several times. If you watch the scene where the recruits give private Leo a blanket party, you can see Nadine really lay into him and pause for a second and then give him a couple more bumps for good measure. That wasn't acting, he just really wanted to hurt the guy. Production also had to be shut down again when Army crashed his car and broke all the ribs down one side of his chest, and it was 4 months before he was finally back in action. Principal photography was originally intended to last 4 to 5 months, but ended up taking almost an entire year, to the point where some of the actors had to drop out of other roles as production dragged on, which didn't exactly do any favors for morale. Matthew Modine almost missed the birth of his son after Kubrick refused to let him leave the set. Luckily for him though, he had the perfect solution. Sternly, he announced, "I've got a knife in my pocket, and if you don't let me go right now, I'm going to cut myself bad enough that you have to go to hospital anyway." Apparently, he was bad enough that even Kubrick had to get sense to back down on the agreement that Nadine would be back on set as soon as the birth was over. But even when he did come back, he actually berated the poor guy for choosing a shit name for his son. Damn man, that's brutal. Filming finally wrapped in August 1986, after which the movie went into the usual torturous editing process, overseen every step of the way by Kubrick himself. Although it proved to be a financial success when it finally released in the summer of '87, taking in 120 million worldwide, it wasn't quite the blockbuster hit that Kubrick had been looking for. Movies like Platoon and Mayhem and The Punisher offered a more accessible window into Vietnam. That being said, a film like Jackie is still widely regarded as one of the greatest war movies ever made, and it provides a uniquely unsettling insight into the dehumanization and brutality of warfare and the machine that feeds young men into it. The making of this movie might have been almost as torturous as the war itself, but the end result more than justifies all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into its creation. Full Metal Jacket is a war movie unlike any other, and if somehow you still haven't experienced it, I can hardly recommend that you give it a go. Oh yeah, and just a little reminder that the critical drinking and critically doggo plushies are still available to pre-order for the next few days, but once they're gone, they're gone, so if you're gonna do it, now's probably a good time. Anyway, the link will be in the description. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
You ever had bearskin? I have bearskin. Bearskin hay is actually grown from young animals and cultivated in poor Texas conditions. It offers a yearly exposure into the rain and in wild, it can actually provide the extra protection that your clothes need. Know why? Because to make sure you're prepared for Mother Nature. Bearskin Little.
Get 60% off the Bearskin Little today when you go to bearskin60.com.
When it comes to movies, they really don't make them like they used to. And normally I consider that a bad thing, but occasionally you hear stories so wild, so ridiculous, downright shocking from the so-called golden age of Hollywood that it makes you realize, yeah, maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. Such is the case with The Wizard of Oz, one of the most famous and iconic musicals of all time.
I'm not sure I'll ever understand that one. I mean, I get it.
Boundaries of cinema, and according to the Library of Congress, the most watched movie in all of human history.
Wouldn't hurt to put a 5 chord in.
Costumes and the technicolor dance routines, there lies a sordid story of exploited actors, deadly accidents, abusive directors, literally toxic work environments, and fucking random midgets. The making of The Wizard of Oz might be one of the wildest and most punishing productions in Hollywood history, and
Whatever that was. And I guess that's the whole thing. Except that one. Oh, fuck that one. So there you go. You've witnessed my professional opinion on whatever the fuck it is. It's a suite in D minor, I think. Suite in D minor. That's my professional take on it. So there you go.